Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So welcome to our March 27th Tiverton School Committee meeting. I'd like to welcome our championship hockey team as well as members of our legislative delegation, Representative Edwards, Senator Felag, and Senator De Palma. Is anyone signed up for open forum? Okay. I'm going to ask for a motion regarding the consent agenda.
Dr. Larkin, I would ask that we table from the consent agenda in the minutes items for B, D, and E.
Okay, is there a second? I'll second. I'll ask for a vote. Mr. Dakotas? So this is a motion to table items in the minutes for 4B, D, and E.
Sure. Yes.
Mrs. Pavo?
Yes.
Mrs. Farnworth?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes. Can I have a
I'd
motion?
like to make a motion to approve the remaining consent agenda.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Take a vote. Mrs. Farnworth?
Yes.
Mrs. Pavo?
Yes.
Mr. Dakotas?
Yes.
And I vote yes. I'm sure none of you knows what that means, but that's all business work. So now to the more exciting item. Item 5A, recognize members of the state championship hockey team. Well done, gentlemen. Mrs. Craven, I'll turn the floor to you.
Thank you, Dr. Larkin. Yes, this is a very exciting evening because these boys definitely deserve the recognition they're about to get. So the co-op is new this year to Tiverton. It's Tiverton, Rogers, and Middletown, and formerly it was Rocky Hill who was part of this co-op. So when the opportunity came up last year, I jumped at it. A great opportunity for these boys. Mr. Scheffler was instrumental in bringing it to our attention, and I can't thank him enough, and I'm sure these boys feel the same way. So they accomplished the Division II championship, great kids, great accomplishment. They also have a great coach who I'm about to introduce, and John and I go back a long way. I was actually his teacher in Narragansett. I was his 8th grade teacher, which is a typical only in Rhode Island
12
story.
at the time?
Yeah, absolutely. So join me in welcoming John. So he's going to give us a little bit about the season. And then we're going to show you a quick video first, and then we'll have him speak. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
We don't have.
So obviously, you can't enjoy that video as much as you did the moment, right? I was there, Dr. Sanchioni was there, the athletic director was there, as many of the faculty, staff members, and students and parents, and it was unreal to see the excitement these kids felt, and I just hope that they'll never forget that moment, and I'm sure they won't. So, John?
First, I want to say thank you guys for having us here, and thank you to Mrs. Craven and Mike Scheffler, who she mentioned. I don't know if this happens without them. They did an amazing job getting it together, being proactive, and bringing on these fine gentlemen over here. And thank you to the coaching staff that helped me out the entire way. But most importantly, we always say as coaches, like, you got to thank the student athletes that came with us. Without them, there is no team. They drive a long way to St. George's. That shows dedication. They do that about 3 times a week for practice only, for an hour and 20, and we practice from like 8 to about 10 o'clock at night. So they get up, they go to school, they got good grades. We check their grades, so we make sure on that. But I think on a bigger scale too, this team probably had one of the biggest turnarounds in Rhode Island high school sports history. They went from not winning a game last year to the state champion this year, going 16-2-2. It's very easy for high school kids to get discouraged when you're not winning and just call it quits and the co-op ends. But instead, they joined our co-op, and I can honestly say we wouldn't have been in the position we were in without them. They brought determination, a great deal of motivation every single day, because you could tell how much it meant to them, even just to get that first win. And then the second win, because they've experienced a harder season before. So it was fantastic to see these guys. I mean, they fit perfectly with our team and our system, and they're just great kids. And we're just beyond proud of them, and I just couldn't imagine this team without them. We, like I said, we wouldn't have been where we were or where we ended up without them. But they deserve all the credit for all the hard work and effort they put in. A couple of them were fighting through injuries the entire season. They just kept showing up. And like tough injuries, not just, something just to hang your head about. But I can't credit them enough. And thank you guys, thank you all, Ms. Craven, everybody for making it happen. We're excited, and I'm excited to get some of these boys back and hopefully do it again next year. Thank you.
Okay.
So I'd like to call you boys up and present you with a certificate. First, we have Peyton Travis. Come on up, Peyton. Zach Scheffler.
Congratulations, Zach.
Nick Gilkison. Nick Riley. I'll let you say that. Go ahead.
He was a Hobie Baker winner, too, right there.
And Tyler Jordan. Well, congratulations again. Great job.
So again, well done, gentlemen. We've always said that Tiverton punches above its weight in sports, so now we know it skates above its weight in sports too. So congratulations. I don't know if any of the other committee members want to.
So
Chime
to the coaches and to the players, nice job. So for the record, I'm from Middletown. So whether you're from Tiverton or you're from Middletown, right, the Portsmouth thing. So I feel it, right? We coached Pop Warner together, didn't we, Mr. De Palma? And I coached on 3 straight Super Bowl winning back-to-back in Middletown in the 90s. And we had 2 undefeated seasons, but we lost to Portsmouth every year on Thanksgiving. So for you guys to beat them, and I saw them play actually this year at the Abbey, congratulations. That's a job well done. Good job.
I only have one comment. Total props to guys who can skate on that blade. I just never figured it out as a kid. You guys are awesome. Congratulations.
People, anything? Good. Okay, so congratulations again. Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Good job, guys.
Nice job. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, I know.
Gee, it was nice.
No
It was
kidding.
nice having a full house.
Yeah.
While it lasted.
I don't, it looks like, do we have a new rep? Is that another?
Yeah, that's
new-
awesome. Nothing like,
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
You're talking sign language now. You stop it. I know you're talking. Here for her. No,
Yes.
nobody's here for her. Just as long as we're
Okay.
here for her, that's all.
So, I'd like to take a brief moment to recognize our student representative to introduce a potential new representative who might be interested in running. So, Sam, take it away.
Yeah, thank you. This is Artemis Polofsky. They're sophomore this year, so next year they would be able to run, and they're interested in running next year possibly. So I invited them to sit in on one of the meetings. Again, if the committee would like them to sit in the audience, that's fine, but.
No, she's
yeah,
welcome.
All right, thank you.
I'm trying to get used to these things, so we'll see how it goes. He kind of already introduced me. My name's Artemis Pulaski. I use they, them pronouns. I'm in my sophomore year, and I'm looking to take over once Sam leaves, so I'm interested in getting to know you all and getting to know the lingo with the committee and just learn the way around it. That's kind of it. Thank
Great.
you.
Welcome.
It's nice to meet you all.
Welcome.
Okay, so next for item 5B, we have yet another championship team. We have our representatives and senators. Senator DePalma, you missed that, right? Senator Larkin, Representative Edwards, to come and talk with us about the legislative session and the impending budget. So, gentlemen, welcome. I don't know if you want to come up to the podium and give us your thoughts or hear ours, or we usually do this a little bit earlier in the year, but I think this was when we.
Oh, no, it's always better to get it out now, because when you come late in the year, it's too late.
No, I know we usually have you guys here
Usually
earlier
earlier.
than now. It's usually like in February, but I think this was the first date that we were able to get work. So,
So it's good to be here. I do want to comment on Councilor Dakota's comment earlier. It's a nice win, especially when whoever you beat, you beat. So we'll keep it there. Thanks for bringing us here tonight. I'm sure Rep. Edwards and Senator Felag will have comments on it. Education funding, right? The education funding formula. The governor's proposed a budget, and now it's obviously the General Assembly's job to figure out what we do with what's been proposed. As it currently stands, Tiverton's expected to lose a fair amount of money in the current budget. Obviously, you got to factor in the special ed, the cost of transportation, the categorical pieces, but subsequent to that, the governor does seek to increase the student success factor by 2%, to go from 40% to 42%. Even still, with that, there's still a loss that Tiverton has. And in fact, if you look at the East Bay, I think the entire Newport County, so all 4 cities and towns that I represent, Tiverton, Little Compton, Newport, and Middletown, all lose. And I think it's the case with Bristol and Warren. I think they're all in that same boat, Jamestown as well. There's a fair number. Not all LEAs lose in comparison to last year, but that is the case. Let me break there for a second. We've already had a hearing on the Senate side with regards to the education funding formula as well as housing aid. There's been a proposal by Leader Pearson, who was previously chair of the Senate Finance Committee. It's been big with regards to education funding formula that looks to revamp or change what the governor has proposed, and it does some different things different than what the governor has proposed in his budget. We need to work through all that. It's a work in progress. A lot more conversation is going to happen along the way there, but we can get you that bill so you can take a look at it. And numbers are being put together with regards to how that will impact all the cities and towns in the state of Rhode Island, and it's much different than what the governor has proposed. Where it will end is uncertain, but we got our work cut out for us, and we'll get you that bill And I think they've done some calculations on the numbers on the Senate side, because it's only been is submitted on the Senate side so far, to see where that will end up in the end is anyone's guess right now. But just know that don't trust us. I can't say trust us, we'll figure it out. We're going to figure it out, and we know what the impacts are to the cities and towns that we represent. So,
Okay. Thanks. I don't know. Why
I
don't
know
we let
Tiverton is going to lose the smallest percentage but the most amount of money in Newport County. The only one in the East Bay that I'm aware of that's actually going to increase this year is Barrington. Barrington's going to get a substantial increase. And Tiverton's decrease is coming because you're having a drop in your enrollment. You're down 92 students. And also the value of the town has increased. It's all part of the algorithm. And that's what is driving the very large decrease for the town this year. On the House side, where finance really starts, we...
it ends with us.
Yeah, but it all comes through from the House. House Finance, we're actually looking to possibly change some of the algorithm, but it's a very large project. The House is looking at it as an all-encompassing thing, because Tiverton is not the only town that's losing money in the state. Like you said, every town in the Newport County is, but there are towns throughout the state. Places like Providence, Central Falls, gaining money again. I mean, obviously they have higher poverty rates than Tiverton does, but there are ways for Tiverton to change the formula. I think possibly through pre-K enrollments. That's one of the systems that Barrington has done, and I have House Finance staff working on all the differences between what Tiverton has done and what Barrington is doing.
So, yeah, that's intriguing. Barrington has increased its enrollment because a lot of people moved there. A lot of people stopped going to private school and are going to the public schools now. I mean,
I can't give you all the details on it. I have, like
So
I said, I have the House
okay.
Finance staff looking at it and going through all the numbers, because the wealth of Barrington has increased as well as Tiverton.
One would think.
So I would say it's got to do with population and some other factors, but as soon as we get it all boiled down, I'll be more than glad to forward it to Member Dakotas.
Mr. Edwards,
If I could give a little statement
Oh,
first.
go ahead.
I don't want to get shut out between the two power brokers.
Do you feel left
here,
out,
you know?
Senator Felag? Are you feeling left out here?
Thank you.
There's a lot of love.
Upstaging you?
I came all the way from Warren. You got to give me some love. Basically, one of the problems, and I think the East Bay Times, or whatever we want to call it, the insert really highlighted the problems that the East Bay is encompassing. If you looked at that particular chart that showed from 2012 to 2022, the enrollment, Tiverton's enrollment decreased by 250 students, or 13%. And then if you looked at Newport and Portsmouth, Middletown, and Bristol Warren as a combined unit, their population, student population, decreased between 18 and 20%. So there's a big decrease in the amount of students at our particular schools in the East Bay. Now, we're doing the best we can in terms of trying to up the ante in terms of providing more funding, but I think it's important and imperative that the school does a good job in terms of identifying those that have reduced lunch or free lunch, because those are all common factors in terms of that overall amount of money that you're going to receive. And now you can answer Jay's question.
So I'll turn it over to or open the floor to the rest of the committee. So Mrs. Farnworth, you had questions.
I do apologize for jumping in. I didn't want to take your thunder, Senator Felag. And I do want to thank the three of you for joining us tonight, and certainly to Senator De Palma for rising to the level of Chair of Senate Finance. That's, as a resident of Tiverton, that's definitely a feather in the cap here. The one thing, and everything you've said is true, right, with regard to enrollment over time. You know, the entire East Bay has struggled. I will also point out that it seems like the wealthier communities that are in addition to the urban ring, in addition to the charter schools, and then on the public side, it's the wealthier communities that continue to get more. East Greenwich, Barrington, each year they continue to get more. One thing that came to mind here with regard to Tiverton, and the three of you I know Tiverton, we have so many, the average age of Tiverton residents is up there. And that may very well be true in some of these other towns. I'm not certain, but I know Tiverton probably more than anywhere. And I was wondering if it would ever be taken into consideration as part of that formula to, give those towns who have the older populations a little bit of a break, and by providing additional funding to state aid for education, because our population is aging. They're doing everything they can just to stay in their homes once they retire. I feel for them just like anyone here would. But at the end of the day, we are responsible for educating our students, and we do need to keep up with the times. We've all been hit with inflation, and that includes the population here. So that was just the one thing. I'd also ask you all to consider, special education, increased help for special education. I'm sure you're aware that those costs vary widely per pupil, and that even a small shift to the higher cost services can decimate our budget in the middle of a year even. Certainly our costs have continued to rise over the years. And of course, we are required and we want to provide the appropriate education in the best setting, right? What's the term you always use? The least restrictive?
Yeah, least
right?
restrictive,
Right?
yes.
Not
my term, but yeah.
And I, just coming from me, I would ask that, the state legislature consider improved support for students requiring, especially the services outside of our school footprint. Thank you again for coming.
Okay. Mr. Dakotas?
So mine is just a thank you more than anything. So Rep. Edwards called me. We had a great conversation. He kind of led me and informed me how this would go, which I did take to the superintendent. So I just want to say I appreciate all three of you, but I do appreciate you coming in to help, Jay. So thank you. Appreciate it.
Mrs. Pava?
I have nothing.
So I guess, again, thank you all for coming and for all the work you do. And I know you guys represent Tiverton well, as well as Portsmouth and Little Compton. I guess, following along on the issue of state aid, if there's any way to change at least the amount that state aid can change year on year, that's what really puts a big hole in our budget. Is if it's 1 or 2%, then that's going to decimate whatever we get from the local levy, and then we've got our fixed rising, not fixed costs, our rising costs, our contractual costs for contracts and energy and healthcare costs, all those things. So if there's some way of building into it that you can either, the best would be you can't, if you can't drop year on year.
Like
now
the town.
Huh?
Like the town can't.
Yeah.
Maintenance of effort.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's one of the problems that we have on a yearly basis because
Right.
of the fact that our budget is predicated on what we call the estimated conferences that estimate all our revenues for
Right.
the particular year, and we have those in November and in May. So in May determines what the estimate's going to be in terms of our revenues that we can provide. But by the same token, as we have conflicting success things coming in terms of the student aid and stuff like that, we got to try to do a better job of formalizing that formula and making sure that we have a final figure for you.
I think just two other quick pieces you bring up, and this came up at in fact, the town administrator from Middletown was there because we were also looking at housing aid, how to change some of the housing aid foundational numbers from 35% to 40%. extending it out 6 months, because just a quick piece on that. If you got all the bonuses that existed, newer and fewer, I was going to say cooler and warmer, but I'm not, STEM, newer and fewer, whatever, warmer and drier, and you got 20 or 25% additional on top of the 35, you can only get 17.5, because as state law specifies, you can only get 50% of your foundational aid. So we're looking to move that foundational aid up to 40, because the likelihood of getting more than 4 of those 5% bonuses would go away, would be there. So you can go from what would have been 17.5 to the 20%. But the two pieces with regard to when Administrator Brown came up and talked about, because the governor did include something in to sort of step it down. Instead of the hold harmless, like it's been the case for the last 2 years,
Right.
One of the recommendations was, can you do it on a 3 to 5 year sliding window?
Yeah.
So that the nuance to that, though, is if you were a great gainer, you're not going to like that very much, right?
Right.
If you're a net loser, you like that a little bit. So, but it smooths it out at the end of the day. If you have huge fluctuations from 1 year to the next, there's an issue somewhere, right? But that would smooth it out. So that was one thing. The other piece with regards, as Senator Feelig indicated, let me go back to a comment he said earlier with regards to, thank you about the chair of the committee, but Senator Feelig has been on finance for 25 years, and there's 2 other members that have been on finance, I think, also for 25 years. Just between the 4 of us, there's 90 years, and that's only 4 people on the committee. So it's a great committee of experience, a lot of longevity, and Senator Feelig is clearly one of the top ones with Senator Sosnowski and Senator Chacon. But the other piece that's been included in the bill that's proposed by the Majority Leader, Senator Pearson, is to look at multi-language learners as to get the success factor, not just the poverty number. Because the expectation was that, right, wrong, or indifferent, when the formula got put in place, if you were a free and reduced lunch in poverty or whatever, then that's the student success factor was there, and it would all cover those that needed English language learning or multi-language learners. Well, we're seeing that's not only the case. So it's looking at, in this proposal, to include multi-language learners as well. So if you have some of those that are not necessarily English language learners, or not only free and reduced lunch, over time, that can be a piece to it as well. So it's another factor to look at some of that, because that is a consideration on learning moving forward. So
They have a very small percentage.
Yeah.
You got to look at it this way. There's so many children in the state. The dollars follow the children. So if a town is populating and the children are moving there, that's where the money's going to move. You have a potential housing project coming up in Tiverton.
Right.
It's going to be children coming in for that.
Right.
That could repopulate your schools. I know there are other costs and issues that brings, but the more children you bring into the town, the better the town will do overall.
Yeah. But we also can't control what might be the net inflow, say, into Providence or some of the other.
No, but you can control what's coming into town.
Yeah. Well.
the charter schools have made an impact. Just in the city of Providence, they lost 7,000 students. They gained 2,000 in charter schools. So charter schools this year, as proposed by the governor, has an additional $20 million because of the changes.
One school got 10 million of it.
But looking at the numbers, that's what it is.
Yeah.
One of my concerns also is that as these schools' populations are decreasing, especially small communities like Tiverton, when do they hit the critical juncture point
Right.
where they can't have a comprehensive high school because they're not able to provide all the different programs that a comprehensive high school has to have?
Well, and that's a really important question. You know, in healthcare, there's something called a critical access hospital, and gets a lot of Medicare funding. I don't think it's Medicaid, it's Medicare funding, because they recognize that if you remove a hospital from a rural area, then it's a 5-hour drive to the, nearest emergency room. I think you have to start looking at the schools like in Tiverton that way, and maybe that's another legislative remedy potentially to sort of say if a school is in an, and we are, by Rhode Island standards anyway, New England standards, we're isolated, not like the middle of Wyoming, but certainly compared to the rest of Rhode Island, even, we're isolated. And so I think maintaining a quality educational opportunity in this community, we would have to go to Massachusetts. We can't go to Portsmouth, we can't go to Middletown, if sort of a hypothetical, if this school closed, our students would be going to, I guess Durfee or something.
And that's kind of my thought process in terms of those schools, like Rhode Island. A lot of times, our federal delegation is able to bring more funding home because we're a small state and they do a minimum type thing in terms of distribution. Maybe that should exist with communities like maybe Smithfield or Tiverton or those other communities that have student enrollment that are in that 1,200 to 1,600 range and are at that point where it's critical that they stay open, especially in light of the fact that the Director of Education really isn't keen on regionalization and providing those types of bonuses to those different communities.
Well, neither of the regions, apparently, if you ask Newport and Middletown. I guess the other two pipe dreams I have are that if there could be a state approach to transportation and a state approach to special education funding, do I want fries with that? Sure. I understand those are gigantic topics, but that is one of the ways we continue to suffer is we get one bid from one contractor for our transportation. Our different situation, but not unlike the state aid, our special education costs can fluctuate so severely over the course of very short periods of time that you can never catch up to it with the local levy and or even state aid. There's Medicaid money that sort of smooths a little bit of that out, but it's never really adequate to that. So
we are looking at the special ed portion of
Okay.
it on the House side. I'm sure you guys have the same thing in the Senate. But the transportation is problematic. I mean, you just saw the problems they had in Providence. If you have one.
Which ones?
Well, with the busing.
Like last year or a couple of years ago when they were
just
burning
recently.
them?
They just a couple weeks ago, they had the issue with the strikes and their increase in pay. I mean, it's not necessarily a great thing if you have a statewide contract, then the entire state would be affected.
Right.
Sometimes it's better to have it almost by regions. I know Tiverton's on a little island by itself out here, which is a problem, but I don't think you want to be really tied with any other of the areas where they have the transportation issues.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks.
We will look into the special ed for you, though.
Yeah,
That's
okay.
a problem for every city in town.
Okay. And then I guess my last thing is we get a lot of notification from RIASC about bills when they're going to be heard. If there's a way of you guys, if you think that there's something that we should show up for, we can try and show up, absolutely. It's hard to kind of sift through everything that the various committees are taking up and actually understanding the impact that might be there for Tiverton. So if there's times when you think that, boy, it'd be great if our, local officials were coming or just sort of citizens, please let us know and we will do our best to rally people to get there.
Well, the Portsmouth School Committee came to a recent House Finance, and they made a very big impact. It was nice to see them up there.
Yeah.
We recommend you come to the Senate. You can leave everyone on the House.
All right. Thanks. Do you have something else?
Just one more thing. Senator Feelike, I apologize. I had no idea you had been on Senate Finance all that time. I learned something very big tonight, but thank
keep
you.
it all up here, so
Thank
tell
you.
everybody.
All right. Anyone else? Sam, anything? Okay, well, thanks a lot, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.
Keep up the good work.
Thanks for coming, all of you, 3 of you.
Vote early, vote often. All right. Next is item 5C, introduce the new Assistant Superintendent for Teaching, Learning, the Director of Student Services. Dr. Sanchioni?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In your packet, you have a very impressive bio for Sarah Kraeger, who's going to take over as our Director of Student Services and also as the Assistant Superintendent. Keeping with our policy of trying to introduce new administrators to the district, we have the pleasure of introducing her tonight. Although a known entity coming into a new role, I'm more than confident that Sarah's going to shine and thrive in this role. So, Sarah, why don't you come on up? Pleasure to see you here tonight.
Thank you, Dr. Sanchioni. As the director for the region for so many years, I was fortunate to have worked in 4 different school districts. And during that time, I've worked alongside and learned from amazing administrators, teachers, and staff. But I'm really excited for this next step in my professional journey and to become part of and focus on one school district. And I consider myself lucky that it's Tiverton Public Schools. I am excited to dig a little bit deeper and more closely into all the transformative initiatives that are happening and really moving Tiverton from good to great. I really believe and truly believe in our administrative staff. I believe in our teachers. I believe in the community of Tiverton, and our students and our families. And I want to thank you, Dr. Sanchioni, and all of you for believing in me. And I look forward to July 1st.
Okay, great. Thank you, Sarah, and welcome.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Sure. So welcome. Did you hear my extended clap? Went a little beyond because everyone's gone. I feel horrible. But we're lucky to have you, and we're looking forward to you coming on July 1st. So thank you. Congratulations.
Okay. Next is item 5D, the FY 23-24. Shouldn't it be the school year, not FY? Yeah. Calendar discussion, possible vote. Dr. Sanchioni.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So in your packet, you have a draft, a recommended draft of the calendar for next school year. We waited until the state put out their calendar and tried to mirror that as best we could. It's very similar to the calendar that you approved for this year. We start off with 3 days of professional development in our convocation. We begin school on August 31st, a couple of days before the Labor Day holiday. Throughout the year, we have some professional development days. Unlike this year, our PD days we're going back to half days. So the students will be in for half days instead of a full DL, and then our PD will be in the afternoon. We work with our trainers to make that work. We feel that's probably is a better option for our students. The only other change from this year to the one you're looking at is the April vacation. For some reason, Rhode Island put that vacation a week earlier this year, and after looking at that, the impact of that, all the superintendents in East Bay contacted RIDE and asked them please to move it back to where it matches up with Massachusetts, because we have many people who live in Massachusetts and now have childcare problems this year. So they did that, and so now we can reflect that in the calendar that we're recommending to you here today.
So they did it for the whole state at our request?
They did it for the whole state. Rhode Island had followed that for years. I don't know why they changed it. This is the first year they changed it. So it's good to put it back where it belongs.
Okay. All right. And we have to actually vote this. Is that correct?
You do.
So I'm going to ask for a motion to approve the proposed school calendar.
I'll make a motion to approve the proposed school calendar for discussion.
I'll second that.
Okay, we'll open up to the discussion. Mr. Dakotas?
So the one thing that's different, obviously, is the presidential primary in April, correct?
That is also added in there, as you
That's
can
added
see.
in there,
Yes.
right? And then we get out actually a little earlier next year, 13th. This year's the 16th.
Right. And that probably predicated on a number of different things, but we obviously 180 days of instruction.
Okay. So if we approve this, parents would be happy they're getting out earlier, right? Isn't that always a good thing? I don't know. I feel like
It's a good thing for
I always feel like the
educators.
biggest complaint is either the last day or the first day, right? So it's
Well, we like getting those days in early. We all know that any days before our state testing are good days.
okay. And then last thing is we're still keeping the half day on Friday, the 22nd of December. That's a half day, right? Before the school break for Christmas, for holiday?
That is correct.
Correct, okay. What's the feedback on that? Good?
Exceedingly
Staff and
good,
everything?
yes.
It's good, right?
Yes, it is good. It's
Okay.
a good way to work with our
Okay.
staff.
All right, especially when it comes on a Friday.
Okay.
I have nothing.
Ms. Pava? Ms. Sparrow?
Okay.
With regard to the primary day in April, I notice you have a PD day the week before. And I also, in looking at RIDE's website, it appeared that the state was trying to make the suggestion perhaps that that day be used as a PD day as opposed to a day off. And I'm just, thinking out loud here, that if that were something that were possible, we could start school after Labor Day and still get out by the 14th. Is that something you considered?
It did, and I looked at that closely. It just comes down to how many days we have negotiated with our unions. And to make that a PD day really would be an extra day of work. We'd have to negotiate that.
Instead of the 12th?
Well, you were just, the school year were just done earlier. A day earlier, right?
So a PD day is different than an instructional day, right? So an instructional day is 180 days of instruction, and then
Right.
we negotiated an additional 3 days that we take prior to the school year. So that's what the teacher's contract is, 183 days. If you
Right.
make that a PD day, it's a work day, it's 184.
Okay. No, that's a great point.
Okay. All right.
I tried.
The PD
is
day
there-
on the 12th is, again, that's a DL day.
Yeah,
That's, I mean,
yeah.
not a DL day, that's a half day.
Yeah, no,
Yes,
I'm not
ER
interested in
is
trying
early
to.
release, right?
Right,
Yeah.
early release. And so we
I
can't have an early release day on the 23rd because they need the buildings.
No, I'm not, I certainly not interested in extracting another day. I'm just trying to make it a little, it just seems a waste to not have school on the primary
we
day.
agree.
Especially that late in the year and a state this small. Do you
We were
have
told
to
they
clo-
need the schools.
Well, don't they just need the gym?
Well, they use the gym, and you probably know this better than I do, at the high school and at Pecasset and at Ranger, I believe.
If I'm not mistaken, we're required to shut down.
I think you are
I don't think
correct.
we have a choice, Jerry.
Okay. All right. Anything else? Mr. Farley?
Yeah, two things. Just
If all goes well, you won't be here this night.
yeah,
That's one thing.
good riddance. I'm sure you're all thinking. Just to the point of, even if we could have it open on election day, I feel like it wouldn't be a good idea because teachers then, primary day rather, but still might be troublesome for some teachers. Question for you, Dr. Sanchioni. What was really behind the decision to change the PD days from distance learning to half days?
A number of factors. Talking with our staff, probably not getting the most effective day of learning there. Attendance on those days had sagged, and we believe that having our students come in for half a day will be a better educational environment for them.
Okay, so really, attendance was...
It's a huge driver.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? So,
If I could just add on, Dr. Sanchioni, I kind of agree. I would much prefer to see early release than distance learning in these situations. Now, do you intend to continue with distance learning in the event of inclement weather?
Right, that will be an application we'll submit to RIDE sometime this summer, and that would be my intention. Again, depending if the town had electricity and internet service.
Right. Okay, thank you.
okay. Anyone else? Motion's made and seconded. I'm going to ask for a vote. Mr. Dakotas?
Yes.
Mrs. Pavo?
No, thing.
No voting.
Are you voting?
Voting, yes.
Mrs. Farnworth?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes. All right. Next is item 5E, school committee create a safety subcommittee. This was my item, and I just wanted to open up the discussion to the school committee about what they thought about. It was one of the things that did come up in our meeting that we had in February with the community was the possibility of creating a committee, either a committee, standalone committee to the superintendent, or a subcommittee of this committee. Kind of the governance is a little bit different, and we could discuss that too. But I think it would be helpful to have certainly some of our parents and or teachers as an advisory committee to the district regarding safety. So I'll ask for a motion to open the discussion to create such a committee.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
So I'll open it up to discussion. Mrs. Farnworth, I can see your notes.
Have you read them?
No? Just can see that you have them.
Thank you. Well, I have to say that I am not in favor of creating a safety subcommittee. I think from the perspective of staff and parents, I think that between the advisories, PTOs, and school improvement teams, there have been and continue to be lots of discussion at that level on the topic of safety. I think also that as a body, the five of us, that, you know, we have been very involved, you know, especially after the most recent incidents. We take seriously security, and we always have and always will. I think that keeping the conversations around safety policy and the high-level issues at this level for the five of us, it's important, and it keeps us all informed at an equal plane, and it keeps our constituents informed as our meetings are all taped. You know, as we have these conversations, the back and forth, people have that opportunity to watch it, which would not necessarily be the case with a subcommittee. I don't think this is the time to, you know, for us to abdicate any responsibilities whatsoever around security and safety, and I would not be in favor of establishing a subcommittee.
Well, okay. I think certainly I would not think of this as abdicating any responsibility whatsoever, because that would both be illegal and certainly nothing I think anybody on this committee is interested in doing. I think it is a means of getting the perspective of others in an advisory capacity. So it's not a zero sum where if we established a safety subcommittee, then, you know, we've washed our hands of it, and, you know, safety is only then addressed by this committee. I think it's more similar to the school improvement teams. It is a district-wide opportunity for, again, teachers, other staff, parents, students, to at least meet on a regular basis to give us their perspective and their advice. We had plenty of that, perhaps more than we were looking for, at the meeting in February. This would be an opportunity to keep that discussion ongoing with the community.
Well, Dr. Larkin, I feel that discussion belongs here at our meetings.
Okay, and I think your perspective was clear, and I am offering my perspective.
Thank you.
I feel the same way you do. I do.
Okay.
Yeah, I feel that way also. I think that we had that kind of a subcommittee, we could sit and listen as a subcommittee.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Kotis?
I see the value in having a subcommittee. I also understand what Diane's saying. We do have a lot of other places to draw. However, I wouldn't be opposed to a subcommittee.
Yeah. And if it doesn't seem to accomplish anything, or people are not feeling like their participation is valued, then it doesn't have to exist into perpetuity. I think it's something worth trying. Mr. Farley, any thoughts?
Yeah, so I certainly see your point, Ms. Farnworth. I think the use in a subcommittee in this case is to, again, hear perspectives from people who are in the building and might not necessarily be able to make it to these meetings, or they may not want to speak at these meetings and they want to speak in a more direct case to their representatives, but also in regards to having so many other subcommittees, you know, the SIT, advisory committees, PTOs, I don't necessarily see any hurt in those committees then appointing a representative to go to those safety committee meetings, just to put in input. And as always, this subcommittee would then directly report to the larger committee and report their findings. I can certainly, and I would be very willing to, talk to the student council about them appointing representatives to attend the safety subcommittees. And again, getting that firsthand knowledge of the schools so that you folks can understand what's happening in a situation that may not necessarily be able to be seen in these larger meetings where, again, you're looking at it at sort of a 1,000-mile view.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Sanchioni, you have any thoughts about this, or care to?
Well, if you're going to ask, I'll answer the question.
Well, you are the superintendent.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm going to defer to the side of I won't find it to be valuable for a couple of reasons. A, already articulated by Ms. Farnsworth. This is a topic on every school improvement team, every PTO, parent advisory, and teacher advisory. So I think that there's vehicles out there to get feedback back. Secondly, I'm concerned, like, what are we going to talk about? Like, you can't share with them, like, the findings of our safety security audit. You can't share with them our procedures to deal with certain events. There's so much of this policy and procedures of security that we really can't disclose. And I think that's what people want to know. And it's a tough situation to put us in to say, well, how are you going to deal with this? How are you going to deal with this? And I'm like, I'm not going to tell you because that information cannot be public. That's how we work internally. We don't want someone to circumvent the system who might have ulterior motives. So I think it could also become a predicament for us.
Okay. I think that if we chose to do this, and again, I think there is something to be gained by having a district-wide group that is looking at this, who is not just the school committee, the teachers, or even the police department, but parents and students and others. I think you would have to write some guidance to give the committee both its mission and its governance, to sort of say, well, this is what we're looking for from it. And I guess I'm trying to articulate that at some level. So anyway, I'm, I guess, still in favor of it.
Dr. Larkin?
Yes, Mr. Frost.
I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, I was pretty much done.
I think there's an advantage of having a district-wide committee because it allows, number one, for communication between those teams regarding safety, but also, what's the purpose of a subcommittee? Well, it's to investigate, it's to find an answer. At the end of the day, you should be reporting to the school committee, not necessarily to those committee members, those subcommittee members. So in my mind, the purpose of that subcommittee would be gathering on-site intel from students, from teachers, from parents, who, again, you wouldn't see, or you wouldn't get that information from the safety audits. You wouldn't get that information from talking to the police officers who were here on a drill, right? Drills, all very useful. Safety audits, all very useful, but so is on-the-ground information. And sometimes you can only get on-the-ground information by speaking directly to those informants, for lack of a better word.
Okay, thank you. Any comments or input from any members of the public or administrators present? Okay, hearing none, I'll call for a vote. Mr. Dakotas?
Yes.
Mrs. Pavo?
Yes.
Mrs. Farnworth?
Absolutely not.
Okay. And I vote yes. So motion passes. I do believe we should probably try and, again, write some guidance. And I don't know, Dr. Sanchioni, you want to take a first pass at that? And we can take that up again at our next meeting. Both, and I think we have to also clarify, does it report to the superintendent or to the school committee? And we can discuss that, I think, at that meeting as well. All right, we are up to item 6A, present special education transition program. Ms. Kraeger.
He has it, yeah. Oh, is there a video? Presentation, yeah. You have the presentation, Marco? Not that one? Can you shoot it to them real quick? They'd have it in their packet, yeah.
I have it if if I email it to you, so.
Can you do that? We'll do it. 'Cause
You're gonna do it, okay.
Okay. Marco.
No, go back. Transition programs. I got it. I have it. Oh, who's this guy? Is this Marco?
Mhm.
Who's this guy? Marco Polo. Is that right? But we skipped this, right? Because we're gonna go to executive
For
session.
some reason not coming out. There it is. There it is.
So-
All right, see if you can bring that up.
Oh, this is the only one I had. Okay. Okay, so this we didn't do.
Correct.
Okay,
We
did
just did
this,
E, there's
yeah.
no F.
Okay,
Go.
that's out. Should I take this out? Should I take F out? I'll just go with the flow. Because I checked before I left my house and I didn't have anything else. Because we have to do these.
This isn't on there.
This is not, we're not doing this? Okay, negotiation council, all right.
There you go. Thank you.
So the transition. Okay. And then, that, okay.
Ready?
94.
Ready?
Business security advice. Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
So, yeah, we've got the presentation up, so I'll go ahead and get started. Okay. Thank you, Marco, for getting that up. So when the region was dissolving, as you know, one of the areas in which we still had to come up with some planning for was our transition programs. So that's for students 18 to 22. I just wanted to start out before I go into that with just what transition services are for a student who has a disability and has an IEP. And it really starts out at age 14. The student's IEP is not only school-based, but there's a few pages and activities that start to have the student and the IEP team focus on what happens after school. So for students who are going into a 2-year or 4-year college, plan on doing so, we make sure that they are taking courses to meet that goal. Similarly, if they're looking into going to a training school or vocational school, we do the same. We want to make sure that they're taking some classes or some community courses that will allow them to reach that goal in post-secondary education. Some of our students, however, require more time with a special education teacher, and that is between the ages of 18 to 22. And some of those activities include community activities, more functional academic skills, and independent living skills. So then when we go to our actual program. So the Transition Academy has historically been housed over at Gaudet Middle School. Next year, it will be housed at Gaudet Middle School again, and it will become a partnership program between Middletown Public Schools and Tiverton Public Schools. It will look very similar as it has in the last several years. As you can see there, I indicated some of the skills again, the vocational skills, community-based and social skills, independent living and functional academic skills. And you can see some of our students on the next slide actually involved in some of those activities. And what their days look like, they're actually in a classroom 3 days. working on some of the transferable skills and soft skills. And then on 2 days, they're in the community, either at a community-based event or activity, and they also go into a vocation. And we look at which area they're going to go into work based on their interests and activities. So you can see there's some students doing the cooking, folding. That group that's there with the Christmas ornaments, they actually created those Christmas ornaments and sold them at a craft fair. But one of the students was there to work on his social skills, to greet people and ask people for money when they were purchasing. One student was there to actually work on the money skills. So, there's different transferable skills that they can do in some of those activities. So our second transition program is our Project Search program, and I know all of you have heard me talk about this in the last several years. This is one that's a real partnership program with ORS, BHDDH, and Lifespan. It is housed at Newport Hospital, and the students really become interns, and they work at Newport Hospital alongside colleagues. So they go into different internships or workplaces, for example, facilities they may work in. They may work in the cafeteria or in food services. They do some things with the medical supplies and even laundry at Newport Hospital. So throughout the year, they do that, and they complete 3 different work rotations. At the end of, you can just go to the next one, at the end of the school year, each of the students have some sort of employment, part-time, full-time, or supported employment if they need it. And we have had 100% of our interns have jobs and continue to have jobs after that. So both of these, like I said, are partnerships with Middletown. Dr. Sanchioni and Mrs. Kraeger I advocated for it, but it was not hard to advocate for because they believe in these programs and what the students need. And these were also part of our initial budget when we were looking at the dissolution, part of our initial budget. So those dollars have been in there. That's it.
Thank you, Sarah.
You're welcome.
So I'll open up the floor to questions from the committee. Mr. Dakotas?
I have none. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Farley?
Switching up the order, I see.
Yes.
No, nothing other than thank you for taking the time and going through this for us. Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Mrs. Farnworth?
So, 2 questions. How many students do you currently have at Newport Hospital?
At the Newport Hospital, we have 5. And we actually have had in the past, we don't this year, but we've had in the past other school districts tuition their students into that.
Okay.
So we've had students come from Lincoln, North Kingstown, East Greenwich, Narragansett, Bristol Warren, Portsmouth. So we've been able to tuition students into that program as well.
I've always been amazed by that program. I really have.
I know.
think
You
it's
should
such a
come
great-
see it. I'll go with you to come see it. It's really, like, you see the pictures of it, but when you see these kids really part of the Lifespan community, it's cool.
I'd love to see that
It's
sometime.
cool.
And then my other question is, okay, so this is going to be a partnership with Middletown. So essentially, the families, the students aren't really going to see any kind of change.
Exactly.
Is it going to be equal? Is there going to be, who's going to call the shots?
So together with the director, special education director in Middletown, we'll work collaboratively to do that. To be honest, the programs are very well established. We have a head teacher and a job coach in both of those programs who have been there since the beginning, the inception of the programs, and they are just solid. They can really kind of function on their own. So I think it would just be working collaboratively with the new special ed director. But we would still oversee our students, so I would oversee the students in both of those programs from Tiverton, and the Middletown director would do so with the Middletown students.
Okay, thank you. I hope that this partnership can continue for
Me
years
too.
to come. It's
Me
been a
too.
very successful program.
Agreed. Thanks.
Thank you.
Could I ask?
Yeah, yeah. You're next.
Sarah,
Yeah.
excuse me. Do any of these children ever, is there a chance that any of these students might end up with some type of a job at the hospital?
We have had 3 interns have jobs at the hospital, and they still do. There just has to be openings at the hospital, but they legitimately have to go through the same process anyone else would. But we have had 3 of our interns have jobs at the hospital, yeah.
That makes
Yeah.
me feel good. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Mike, did you already
That's
come?
it.
You went- Yeah, okay.
So-
Well, it's great work, and I have to say, Lifespan's actually done a lot of work in the communities, both in Newport and in Providence. I'm not an employee of Lifespan, just to be clear, and I'm not always a fan of Lifespan, but this is really good work that they do and that you are doing, so thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, they've been a really good partnership with us.
Yeah, okay. Anyone from the public? Okay. Next is item 6B, FY23 budget update. Ms. Roderick?
Because I haven't eaten. So, wait, not. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Larkin. Unfortunately, the screen doesn't read very well, but I believe you also have a copy in your packets. This is our usual second meeting of the month update on where we stand on the current year budget by object code or account code. As usual, I'm not going to go through every single line item, but I can tell you that by each category, we are still well under budget and on track to come in on budget by the end of this fiscal year. And when I say by category, like the 51,000s, the 52,000, so on and so forth. We, as you can see at the bottom, I have again provided, we have the total of what's been expended versus how much of that is capital, how much is operational, and how much of that is just a timing difference while we're waiting for reimbursements from grants. At this point, I will let you ask me specific questions about any line items that you'd like to know about.
Okay, thank you, Amy. Ms. Farnworth?
As per usual, I do have a few questions.
Okay.
Why we love you.
Yeah. And this topic came up at the town council level recently, and I've been meaning to ask you about this. Are we receiving solar credits at this point against our energy costs?
I can check on that for you. I know that the solar field has gone live, and I have to make sure that I have to confirm that we are actually getting those.
Okay, because I think the town indicated that they are getting.
Well, the town was getting them well before we were, and I believe our source is coming from a different solar field, and that was almost, I think, a year behind the town. But I can certainly get that information for you.
Thank you. I just didn't want to forget about it.
No, thanks for the reminder.
But weren't we all party to the same agreement, or I thought we piggybacked on theirs or somehow?
Well, then, if you recall, I think it was potentially a year ago or so, Andrew from Kearsarge came in, and we signed an agreement where I believe that the solar panel field that we're coming from is from Smithfield, which I believe is now different than the town. But I will confirm all of that for you, because unfortunately I can't remember off the top of my head right now.
Okay, thanks.
Sorry to put you on the spot with that.
No
one,
worries. No worries.
Bus monitors.
Yes.
Continues to be fairly below budget.
Right. So, again, going back, we budget roughly, I don't know, a year ahead of time. So when I had initially done the budget, the contract states that we are required to pay a 4-hour minimum for each bus motor. So that's what I budget for. However, they are only billing us actual hours. And they're doing it again, although up for 24, I did make that adjustment to bring it down to actuals, because this is now will be the third or fourth year running where that has occurred, and I'll take it where we can get it.
Yeah, yeah. No, I agree. And I don't know, did Dr. Larkin mention to you a couple of the questions that came from the Budget Committee
I
members?
have not yet, but I will be sending you an email.
There were questions with regard to energy costs in the FY '24 budget that just high level, are you sure? kind of thing. There was also a question on property insurance.
Mhm.
You didn't fill in a line item for property insurance for '24. Was it included in another line item? And we don't have that in front of us.
This was in the budget book.
Yeah.
I can't.
So we're
Something to look at.
Okay, I will look, certainly.
And then I think we need to also, if you don't mind, I'd like to receive with our next monthly packet a rundown of where we are with our fund balance since the audit, less any committed items, as well as where we are with the Medicaid balance.
I can certainly do that. Our fund balance has not changed since June 2022.
But we have committed at least one.
We have not.
No, we did for sports. It was a small dollar amount, admittedly.
Okay, okay.
But it's something we need to keep track of, is all it is. It's small. But I do think that reminding us where we are with the fund balance, both regular and Medicaid, is probably going to be good for all of us.
Okay.
And that's all I have.
okay. Mr. Dakotas?
Hi.
Hi. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? I'm just curious, and I always am.
Curious? Yes,
I'm
please.
always curious. So one of them is 56219, custodial supplies.
Yes.
So 40,500 budgeted, spent 67,440.
So when
I'm just
Yeah,
curious.
no,
A lot of
so-
paper towels, a lot of mops.
So those are price increases. So every year we are the bidding agent for the East Bay for all of the custodial supplies. And when I prepared the budget a year plus ago, we had not gone out to bid for the current year. So those are just, I'll use the term inflationary increases passed on to us by the vendors. We're unfortunately stuck.
Good to know. Okay. Sort of like transportation,
Sort of.
right? Got to get our supplies somehow.
Right, and we do, like I said, we do go out to bid. We do have 3 vendors that we use as part of that bid, the bid results, and again, we're stuck. I mean, everyone is passing their costs on to the end buyer,
Right.
and I mean, certainly we could go out to bid again every year, and I don't, knowing what I know now, certainly can budget for that going forward.
Thank you. 57305, last page.
Yep.
Equipment. 6,100. Actuals 125 grand and change.
I'm sorry, which one, please?
Sure. It's equipment is 57305. That's on the last page.
Yep.
6,100 budgeted, and the actual is 125,000.
Right. So this is a function of our capital that we've had to purchase, or that we've been able to purchase with the allotment from the town. And that is actually included in the capital line down in the orange box at the bottom.
Yes.
So, for example, the steamer at the middle school, the dishwasher at the high school,
Got it.
for UCOA purposes, for reporting to the state. We have our operating budget there in the left-hand column, but to report to the state, we have to report every transaction regardless of the funding source.
Okay.
So that, a good, I would say $80,000 or $90,000 of that is equipment, if not a little bit more. That was funded by capital funds,
Okay.
but I do not combine the capital allotment in the budget column because, after how many years of doing this now, we came to the conclusion collectively that that should be our operating budget, and that's why I sort of made the reconciliation down at the bottom type of thing. And I can certainly, I have a list of all those items.
Okay. It's good. It's a good question, right?
It's absolutely
It's
a good question.
2,000% spend a date, so it just caught my eye.
Like no different than the land improvements and the building improvements. Those are also some capital, like the building improvements, for example. We have a capital budget. And for the bathrooms at TMS,
Sure.
those are reported here but we don't show the budget here. It's, you know, we could kind of do it apples and oranges, and I'm happy to add a column, but I was
okay.
trying to keep it simple
I see
down
where
at the
it's
bottom.
reflected down below in capital, so.
Yep.
Now I know that is down here. So my last one is the final numbers in the bottom right. So budgeted at 1.364 million.
I'm sorry, where are you, please?
Sure, I'm on the bottom right.
Oh, bottom right,
The
yeah.
very last, under the 60,000.
Yep.
All the way to the right.
Yep.
So 1.3 million.
Yep.
Actual is 906. So the balance is in the red of 457, right?
Sort of.
Okay. I'm only asking because I don't know.
Yeah,
If
no,
you tell me,
no.
I'll understand better.
That's fine. I'm happy to explain it. So, in the effort to be transparent, I think sometimes, I don't know, as an accountant, if I give too much information, I think Dr. Sanchioni thinks that sometimes, as I get into the details. So, basically, I would take that as a column by column comparison. So, for the first one, our budget is $1.3 million more this year than it was last year.
Right.
This year, we have spent $900,000 approximately more than last year, although that includes capital.
Okay.
And so when we talk about column to column for the balance remaining for the year, we have spent approximately $300,000 more this year than we did last year.
Okay.
So I think a better indicator of where we stand for the year in total, not necessarily by line item, is if you look at the next to the last line item in the orange box.
Okay.
That's our operating budget, our actual operating expenditures, and how much we have left. And if you look at the percentages, we're slightly under percentage-wise than where we spent in total versus last year.
Got it. Thank you.
But I'm happy to take suggestions or revisions on this to make it easier to read or understand. You know, I'm happy to do that. This is sort of what we've kind of fallen or decided on a while back.
We developed this together, right, as part of the finance subcommittee
Absolutely.
going back, 3 years ago?
Something.
And I think it's really serving us well, and I do commend you for adding the breakout with the grants and the capital last time around, because it gives us the clearer picture of what's operations and what's not.
Right.
So, thank you.
Right.
And again, I'm open to further suggestions for refinement if you folks need that's the case.
Well,
need that to be the case.
I went to Salve, Regina. I couldn't get into Providence College, so I have to ask more questions. Sorry.
You know, I would prefer you do, because you may or may not have been here when we had those similar discussions in the beginning, and it's always good to refresh. So I'm happy to answer any questions you have, assuming I have the answer. Dr. Larkin, you look like you have a question for me.
No, I'm just trying to work through Mike's comments. So, no, I don't have any additional
There are a
questions.
number of us who really
Thank you.
loved Salve. Just saying.
Both fine Catholic institutions. Who runs Salve? Providence is the Dominicans. Who runs
Sisters of Mercy.
Sisters of Mercy. Should have known. All right. All right, we are definitely off topic. Mr. Farley, any comments or questions?
No, besides go whatever the mascot of Salve Regina is.
Seahawks. Oh, I thought it was
Skyhawks. Oh, no, it is Seahawks. You're right. You're right.
There was the Newporters.
it's not an actual Sister of Mercy. All right. It's a good time to move into executive, right? But first, we have to we're meeting next week on Tuesday to have another budget discussion, and then April 18th. I'm actually not going to be here on the 18th, so pleasure of the committee whether they want to reschedule or forge ahead without me. You might be better off.
Dr. Larkin, can I ask for one thing? We haven't had a building committee meeting in a while. Are we scheduling one?
Dr. Sanchioni.
There's an email going out to the Budget Committee.
Building committee.
Tonight, or Building Committee, thank you, tomorrow. And I put on hold our meetings for a while, and reason being is we have one project that's currently being close to completion. That's the bathrooms here at the high school. I don't know if I want to bring people out to tell them that everything's going fine and they're going to finish this project on time, under budget. The other project that we have that's approved by ROD, as you know, is the locker room project at the high school. We have our architects who are working on the design, the cost estimation, and the engineering of that project. But as the committee is aware, we don't have any funding for these projects. And so I've asked our architects to kind of slow it down a little bit until we see where we are. I believe in some communications I've had with members of the building committee who are on the town council that they're going to take this up at their last meeting in April. And as soon as we know if there's an allocation from that casino revenue, as you've requested, the 1.2 million and the reimbursement from our current projects, we would have the seed money to continue with the one approved project from RIDE. The other part we need to start considering, and again, it's a funding issue, is the submission of the next stage 2, which is due September 15th. But again, you know, it's a $300,000 cost to the architects to complete that. And I just thought we should pause until we get a clearer picture on casino revenue and fund balance based upon what our budget allocation is. If, you know, there's available funds in our fund balance, I certainly would come to the committee then and suggest to you that we maybe use that to seed the stage 2 application, get that in and start getting those reimbursements, especially if we're going to receive the reimbursement. So there's just not a lot to do right now until we get clarity on funding.
Okay.
We're also sort of in a bit of a catch-22 with regard to the security audit has to really be completed in order for us to decide, are there significant capital outlays that we want to try and make. And then I think the town council is in the very beginning stages of talking about public safety complex thing, and I think that may drive some of the discussion as well. And then we also we confirmed with the housing authority that we can submit an emergency application again if we had things that we thought were more urgent from the security audit and we could get funding. We could submit a security or an emergency application to get RIDE approval, so then we would be eligible for that reimbursement. So there's, you know.
Yeah, we heard that at our last meeting, I think.
It's a bit of a chessboard. And we sort of know who the pawns are, but nobody's quite sure who the king and the queen are. So.
Oh, I can tell you that. It's not me.
Yeah. All right. So I'll leave my opaque metaphors to people to speculate upon. So, so anyway, back to we're meeting next Tuesday for the budget. Do you guys want to reschedule the 18th or go ahead? I'm just not going to be here.
May I? Oops. Can I just ask a question? If we're meeting, is it just for a budget discussion that you're not intending to have any other business items?
That was the intention, I thought, when we set that meeting, correct?
On the 4th?
Yeah.
That was a regularly scheduled meeting because of the vacation being off. The vacation falls in the second week, so you were still trying to get 2 April meetings in.
I thought we were trying to just
So
have
there will
another
be other
budget
agenda
discussion.
topics. I would say to you that there's nothing going to be time sensitive.
Yes.
I mean, we've already formalized the budget request.
Yes.
And while I totally agree that we need to continue to dig into the line item budget, I think much of that's going to be taking place after the appropriation is set, when decisions have to be made at that level.
Well, the whole timeline's very pushed back to what we're used to as well.
Yeah, it's new. So I'm not quite sure what budget discussions, unless there's already something in mind there that we would be having. But I do also understand with the move up of April vacation, we have to have a meeting sometime, right?
Right. So we can meet on the 14th or the 4th or not. You can meet on the 18th or not, or we can move the 18th to the 25th. I don't know. You said nothing particularly urgent, Peter?
Not for the 4th.
No. Would going all the way to the 25th be too far into the future?
The 25th, I'm sorry.
So I'm just playing with the different meeting dates and times.
Yep.
Or there's...
Well, I mean,
No
Dr.
reason why
Larkin, we've
I
had
need to be
meetings
here.
without you before. It's just
That's
a
right.
question of well, getting a quorum here
Some people would
becomes,
think of that as a feature.
no, just getting a quorum can become problematic, right? We've had a couple of
That's
three-people
also
only
true.
meetings, so it's,
Well, I'll make it easy. If you move it to the 25th, I can't be here, so doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, one of us not.
All right.
It doesn't matter. I'll take a night.
Steph gonna start coming back to meetings?
that's,
Only she can say that. It's going to be after tax day, so
So
hopefully.
then that's gonna
So
be
tax day is April 18th.
Tax day is April
back
18th?
to meetings.
Okay,
Well, 17th for Rhode Island, 18th for Massachusetts, but nonetheless,
okay.
I'm guessing, presuming that Deb may not come back prior to the 18th.
April 8th, late April.
Deb, I'm guessing that Deb of April, I'm guessing where April 18th is the federal deadline for taxes.
Okay, so,
Again, I'm just presuming.
yeah. All right, so the first question is, are we going to meet next week?
I would say that there's no pressing issue to meet on, because you met today, and
Yep.
obviously not a lot's going to change between now and Tuesday.
Okay, so let's let the 18th stand.
Okay?
What are
And
we doing with the 4th?
we're not meeting on the 4th,
Taking it off.
taking NyQuil. And then you guys will meet on the 18th.
Sure.
And we'll go from
Where
there.
are you? You're going where?
I'm going to be in Italy.
Oh, thank you.
Nice.
That's very nice.
Get
Yeah.
to chair the meeting.
I figured I would at least.
No, it's a week after. After.
All right.
Is there a motion
Now
to
it's
move into
really
executive?
time to move into executive session. I'm going to ask for a motion to move into executive session under Rhode Island General Law 42465A2, negotiation update, Council 94. 5A3, discussion on the matter of safety and security. 5A7, legal advice on budget. And 5A1, job performance, character, physical or mental health, superintendent goals.
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Ask for a vote. Mrs. Farnworth?
Yes.
Mr. Dakotas?
Yes.
Mrs. Pavo?
Yes.
I say yes, we're in executive.
I'm not staying.
Okay. Yeah, you should go home.